Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Technology of Beauty, where I have the opportunity to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. And today is no exception. We have a guest who was on earlier, Michael Boerner, who is the CEO and co-founder of Engage Technologies. Welcome, Michael.
Dr.
Good to have you, buddy.
Great to be with you. And someone has to interview you because you are the mover and shaker of the aesthetic business.
Well, maybe you can do that one day. But for now, I get to interview you. First, let me set the stage. We're here at the 2022 AIS, Aesthetic Innovation Summit, and we're here in beautiful San Diego, California. And Engage Technologies is here, and they also are going to be at the Aesthetic Society Show. That's the annual show for the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. And they have a booth number 1314, if I'm not mistaken, and there's some exciting breaking news that you're going to share with our listeners and watchers. What's up?
Well, this is a historic week, as you said. We have been in process with this for over a year, and thanks to a number of phenomenal leaders in the aesthetic space, we have a brand new library, which is a phase 1 release that's coming out this week. And so we finally now have an opportunity, after many, many months of work with some of the great doctors walking through the entire patient journey experiences. We call them our whiteboard story arc sessions. And so you've participated in several of those. And now we have an opportunity to take all of that preparatory work and release it into the practice hands. And so we'll have a release specifically for our surgical audience, which will begin in phase 1 with breast augmentation, as well as mastopexy, as well as revision. And so that will be now available, which walks the patient all the way through pre-consult education, post-consult education, and then pre- and post-op education. So it really holds their hand all the way through that entire journey. It's an extraordinarily well-designed piece of work that's got this emotional kind of through line to it that will really help that patient feel relaxed, lower their anxiety, and really take a huge burden off of the staff.
That's very exciting. And will the surgeons in attendance at the meeting be able to get their hands on that library?
They will. So our model is kind of like Netflix for business. So it's a monthly subscription that's very inexpensive, and then they receive all of the content, all of the technology, which is wrapped in that practice brand, and it's delivered through mobile intelligence, which is our mobile technology, and that allows the patient to receive it on their mobile device via text, and then it's wrapped in that practice look and feel.
And what about non-surgicals? What are your plans there?
So non-surgical, we have a whole release that's coming out. We're starting with neuromodulators and fillers, so that's the first release. It'll come out this week as well. So that will be offered as a standalone, and it'll also be paired with a surgical library. And then we have a great number of new parts of that library which will be coming out in later parts of the year. So we'll just continue to add the most popular procedures that follow along surgical and non-surgical pathways.
How will a patient find this information?
So the patient delivery really is one of 3 ways. So the first way is for the practice to use something called our My Guide, which is a simple portal on any Mac or PC. They just simply send a text to the patient while they're at home. They receive it on their phone, but it can be done through a simple portal that we've made for the practice. It's a simple URL that's designed for the practice brand, so they don't have to install any software. And all they have to do is ask for the patient's phone number, their cell number, and their name. And they put it into our guide, and it sends it right to the patient.
Okay.
The other way is they can actually scan one of our guides right there in the practice. And so when they scan it, it does a text right into our mobile technology. But again, it's wrapped in the practice brand, so that's the second way. And the third, which we're quite excited about, is an integration into the practice management system itself.
Okay.
And so the staff does what they normally do, scheduling appointments, and then it automatically connects with our platform and then sends out that communication directly to the patient with no new human interaction from the team.
So if a new patient were to call and make a consult, having never been in the practice, is there a way that you can push that content to them? They can read it or watch it before they come in and see the doctor?
Exactly. So as we integrate the practices, when they subscribe, we're actually going to be incurring that cost ourselves and putting the integration as a part of our subscription. And so we'll actually put a small piece of software onto the IT person's hands there at the practice, and that runs a simple report that pulls out only that patient data that's relevant to that particular workflow, and that way the staff doesn't have to do any additional work after integration once it's set up.
And is it based on their cell phone?
Correct.
And so it's sent to
Name
their
and
text.
cell phone. That's exactly right.
So they get the information on their text, and this is before they walk into the practice.
Correct. And of course, the real benefit of pre-education, we see this in some of our other market verticals. And you know, as a doctor, if you're in a college education situation and you talk to freshmen all day, it's very different than talking to seniors. Where do we park? How does this work? What time is lunch? So when it comes to a practice, being able to have people pre-educated before they come in saves so much time on the staff, so much better used time with the doctor, because suddenly that dwell time is much more educated. The patients come in prepared to be able to have discussions that are much more mature in their process.
And you have experience in other verticals, right? You've done this in ophthalmology, optometry, and dentistry, correct?
Correct. And we have new forays into orthopedic surgery, knee, hip, spine, etc. But they all follow that same pattern, which is how do you better educate a patient in that trusted relationship between provider and patient themselves. But what we all want is something that's fast and easy, that's delivered at what we call height of interest, time of need. And when it comes in via mobile, everyone prefers text nowadays.
Yes,
but when they get the text, it's got a tiny little link in it that when they tap the link, it opens up this short sequence of video content from their doctor. So no one knows we're involved at all. We want to make it look like the practice has invented the entire process.
Can the doctor personalize the message?
They can. And so we've designed it so it doesn't require any production or shooting at all. But for those practices that would like, we make it very easy for them to drop in their own video greeting right into the workflow. So it makes it simple for them to appear on the video content as well. And of course, it's surrounded by their look and feel all around the content in the platform in addition.
That's very interesting and very exciting. Now, what about industry? Are you working with industry at all? Any of the industry partners?
We are. You know, one of the most important components for a practice is for that staff and those doctors to be able to educate the patients. Well, many times, industry provides some of the greatest methodologies of education for their tremendous products that they've spent huge amounts of R&D money on. And so we're working with great companies like Allergan, Revance, Galderma, MERS, some of the great organizations that have a method of educating their patients. But what we do is we work with the manufacturers to make sure their story is told very, very effectively, exactly the way they want it, and then the doctor has an opportunity to use the manufacturer's content to educate their patient. And for those docs that say, you know what, I'd rather just do kind of a generic or universal method here. I don't want to mention a specific brand because I'm not sure what they may present with. We also have a generic or universal way to educate about the same thing.
Now, in the case of educating patients, we'll say on the breast surgery, you mentioned breast augmentation, breast revision, and mastopexy. The patients are going to be in this journey you're talking about. Where did you get the information? How do you know, how do I know as a surgeon that this information is accurate? You mentioned that you're whiteboarding with the KOLs and so forth, but is that the only source of your information?
Yeah, the information, what you're bringing up is incredibly important because the editorial integrity of the content, of course, is paramount to the practices subscribing to the content. And so we have a number of ways we get the information. Primarily it comes from the key opinion leaders from our medical advisory board. So our medical advisory board is made up of some of the best minds across those multiple disciplines. We spend huge amounts of time with them mapping the entire patient experience. We also bring it by the teams, not just the doctors, but also the administrators, the nurses, the people who deal with the patients in a non-surgical and non-invasive way. And we also have industry, for the industry content, being reviewed and going through the legal processes and the hoops that are very important to that process as well. So it's some of the most reviewed content in the world, and most importantly, it isn't just clinically accurate. It's designed to really lower the anxiety and create the feeling that that patient is having their hand held by that practice all the way through every part and every step of the journey.
Is this Aesthetic Society involved at all?
They are. In fact, the Aesthetic Society, we're very grateful because a major core portion of our content comes from the Aesthetic Society's guide, which is at surgery.org, which is an extraordinary continuum of content that's also been developed by some of the great doctors. And so we have a wonderful partnership with the Aesthetic Society to be able to have that editorial root and kind of core that's built into our fabric of the content as well. So it's a great participation for some of the most vetted experiences that I think you'll ever see. That's
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for appearing here on the Technology of Beauty and the Aesthetic Innovation Summit. Have a great show, and I'll certainly pop by your booth.
Well, thank you.
1314 on the exhibit floor, right?
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you. Excited about this week.